Restarting? Hello, everyone. I'm Maria Turner, the Executive Director of the Fond du Lac Area Women's Fund, coming today with another episode of Project Table Talk. This is an educational series that the Women's Fund puts out to discuss topics that aren't often brought out into the public. One of the things we want to discuss today is a very serious topic in leading into Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We want to discuss a little bit about what it takes to heal from the trauma of sexual abuse, whether or not that occurs as a child or it occurs as an adult. And to do that, I have some experts here with me today. First of all, I have my co-facilitator, Erin Flood, who's a member of our board of directors. And then I have two members from ASTOP Sexual Abuse Center. We have the executive director, Anna Koepsel, and the prevention educator, McKenzie Zahradnik. And then we have two local therapists here with us, Kaitlyn Kenealy and Keziah Love, who are also our upcoming Women of Achievement for 2022. And will be honored.
Yay!
They will be honored at our event, our Power of the Purse Mind If Luncheon on April 27th, which the topic of that is mental health. So this is the second in a three-part series addressing various mental health topics. As I stated, we are tackling this topic as we lead into April as Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. So with that, I want to mention to any listeners that you may be triggered during this conversation. We will be touching on various things related to sexual abuse and potentially child sexual abuse. So I just want to put that warning out there. With that, I'd like to start out. Anna, if you could start us off by just giving us an idea of the prevalence of sexual assault here in our community. You know, what kind of numbers are we looking at? How many people are affected? And then to talk just a little bit about the types of services that ASTOP offers to victims and survivors in the community.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Maria. So at ASTOP in 2021, we served over 500 individuals. So that is adults and children for sexual assault services. So the variety of services that we offer are completely free and confidential. So no one ever has to worry about, how they will pay for getting the help when they walk through our doors. And confidential meaning that no one will ever know that they're coming to get services from us unless they choose to disclose that. So it provides a really safe space for any survivors of sexual abuse and sexual assault to come and know that their information will stay protected and private, and they'll be able to get those healing services at no cost for them. So we offer advocacy, and the way that I like to describe advocacy really is it is just a support person for that survivor, that victim. There's someone who will help them walk through the process. They're not a licensed counselor, but they're just someone who will be able to support them through that process. And some of our clients who come through have not disclosed their sexual abuse or their sexual assault to anyone else in their life. So they can sometimes be that person that might be the only one in their life who knows about what happened to them and still provide that sense of support that is so important for victims and survivors. So we have what we call medical advocacy, and then we have criminal justice advocacy. That medical advocacy is for any of the sexual assault exams that take place at St. Agnes Hospital or Aurora and Oshkosh is the two hospitals that we serve for that. The main purpose of a SANE exam is to collect evidence. So if that victim or survivor chooses to move forward with reporting it to the police, they have that evidence that's collected in that SANE exam that they're able to use with that. And that criminal justice advocacy is that we are able to support that victim or survivor when they're reporting to police, or when if they have a case that goes to a trial, we can attend that trial with them and walk them through the criminal justice system, which can be really overwhelming and scary to survivors. So we're just there to ultimately support them through that. We also have case management where we can help our survivors with any needs that they have that might might set them back on their healing journey. So if they need some housing resources, if they need resources to anything else in the community that can really help them fulfill their basic needs, we can help provide those referrals and walk them through that. We also offer counseling free of charge. So we have 2 counselors at ASTOP. One of them does EMDR therapy, which I'll talk a little bit about later, what that means. And then we also have another therapist who can do art therapy, and they also do traditional therapy as well, with ages starting as young as 4 into adulthood. And then we have our support groups that take place weekly for victims and survivors to come and be able to interact with other victims and survivors for some additional support. We have our 24-hour crisis line. So any day of the week, anytime during the evening, on holidays, we are always there to answer that phone for anyone who needs some support from us. And then we have Prevention Education, which is McKenzie's job. And that job is really important, where we're going out in the community, hopefully being able to give our community the tools on how to recognize sexual abuse, what to do if it happens to you. And then it also helps us to reach out to those children or adults in our community who may have experienced sexual abuse and who are interested in getting connected to services. And one last thing I want to say is that all of our services are available to victims and survivors themselves, but also to their loved ones. So we call them secondary victims. So if we have a child sexual abuse case, their parents or guardians can get services from us. And I always like to tell individuals as well that, say one of their friends is trying to figure out how they can help support them through that, we're available as a resource of just being able to help people know how they can better support their loved ones who are going through a difficult time.
Yeah, Anna, your services are so comprehensive, and it's nice to know that you're not only offering service for the direct victim, but knowing that really it affects everyone who's close to the person. You know, I always think in my mind that trauma transfers, right? When it's not dealt with. So providing service for everybody, I think, is so important. Do you mind just clarifying, if the person is not getting services directly, you explained it so well from the hospital and what it looks like maybe with the criminal justice system, but what if someone right now is listening and is thinking I need help, I'm going to call the hotline. What does that initial contact look like?
Yeah, that initial contact, when someone gives us a call, we'll just ask them a little bit, what's going on, that prompted you to give us a call? What is it that we can help you with? Kind of what are your needs in this situation? And typically the caller will explain a little bit of what's going on. And what that will look like is we might grab some basic information. If they say, I'm really interested in getting connected to your advocacy services or counseling services, we can grab their basic information from them. And then our case manager does that initial contact with the individual who contacted us for services. So she's able to assess those needs and then provide, like I said, those external referrals, but then also provide those internal referrals, and then walk that individual through the process of getting services here from us, be able to go over all of our confidentiality and privacy practices. So that first call really allows us to gather information from them, what their situation is, and how we can link them with services.
I love the services that you're offering, Anna. It is, like Erin said, so comprehensive. It's wonderful that families are supported in the process. One of the things that strikes me too is that there is just a ripple effect, right? And I think that may be one of the reasons why victims don't come forward often, is because that, they know how they've been affected, but they're also so concerned about how other members in their family will respond and be affected too. So I'm thankful to hear that you're doing that. So Kaitlyn, on your end of things as a counselor here in town, I am wondering specifically what this looks like when people come to you? Primarily, and this is just a guess on my part, but I have a feeling that there's a good number of clients who come in expressing some other issue that they're dealing with or having struggles with. And then as you start to peel away those layers like an onion, you uncover something from their past, an unresolved sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, something like that. So talk to me a little bit about that and what that looks like.
Sure, absolutely. So how do I want to say this? Sexual abuse or abuse in general is probably about the top 5 things I talk about with anybody coming in. So you're correct. What they could be presenting with are symptoms of depression, anxiety, and what we uncover through that typically is some sort of trauma. And a lot of times it is that sexual abuse trauma. So that being said, I'm also EMDR trained as well, which Andy, you're going to talk about that. Yeah. One of the most effective modalities for treating anxiety, depression, PTSD. So I'm a little biased because I'm trained in it and I love it, but it's so beautiful to be able to give people sort of that instant relief, whereas talk therapy, I love. Clearly, I love talking. But to see the patient be able to kind of work through some of those things in the moment, it's like mental health magic, as I like to call it, because they're like, wow, I didn't know that I was having that physiological response, or that trigger now makes sense because we kind of uncovered that. I used to volunteer at the Sexual Assault Crisis Center in Appleton for about 2 years, and I ran support group for adolescent teens who've been sexually abused. We ran parent support group of teens who had been abused, and we also tried to get a male support group going as well. We had people signed up, but then it kind of fell through. During those experiences of running those groups, it's beyond influential into how I've translated that into my practice today. And with those experiences, what I can say, what will always stick out to me is one of the adolescents, teens said, it was worse after I told. And, I always keep that in the back of my mind, because that secret that they harbor, right? And then they don't want to tell anybody because of the ripple effect, which everybody's kind of talking about right now, can be so detrimental. And so I never take it for granted when someone chooses to share that story with me. I'm very cognizant, very trauma informed, and really try to work through it and specialize their treatment in the way that they kind of need. So ASTOP is so needed within this community. We need to support them and get them as many resources as we possibly can, because truthfully, you know what I mean? That you said you served 500 last year. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Think about if the top 5 things that I'm talking about with patients, and I'm just like one clinician on my own out here, you know what I mean? That it's a lot more prevalent than anybody wants to admit. And I think it's important that we have these conversations and acknowledge that, and then help to work through those because of that secret that a lot of people are holding on to. So hopefully I kind of answered the question a little bit. I got a little long-winded, but I'm constantly dealing with it, constantly working through it, and then helping people in the best way that I possibly can. And then if I can't help, obviously using the resources within the community.
Kaitlyn, it's interesting for you to talk about that being one of the top 5 things that you deal with in your practice. And interesting probably is not the best word. It's heartbreaking, really. Yep. But I think it's also important that you highlighted the fact that sometimes when you let the secret out, it does get worse before it gets better, just because you're forced to come face to face again with your trauma and to work through it. But I also think, and Keziah, maybe you can highlight some of this, that process might look a little bit different for everyone, right? Depending on our culture, depending on our race, depending on our socioeconomic status, depending on our sexual orientation, depending on, what our trauma looked like, the process of walking through that afterwards. And kind of for your example, Kaitlyn, going through the process of uncovering the secret or finally letting that secret out, Keziah, can you just talk us through how that might look different for different people?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I sit with people of color, let's just do that, because I am a woman of color, you know, and then knowing that the Black community experience higher rates of sexual violence more often than others. And coming from the Black community standpoint, oftentimes it's a fear. And I'm not just grouping the Black community and just saying this is what they go through. I honestly believe that all survivors and victims who still identify as victims feel the same way, yet the Black community is a lot higher. I know that RAIN had a study done in 2017 that Black women were at higher risk than any other group to experience sexual violence in some form. And so as I speak to just women that I sit with, I was working with ASTOP a few years ago for the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative. And then I have my own nonprofit for young girls and women that have experienced sexual assault, sexual violence, domestic violence, and knowing that from this experience and those women and young girls, that oftentimes the sexual assault is done by someone in the family. So in that realm, it's like, hush, hush, we don't tell, or you don't say that. We make it through. We're strong. We're going to get through this. And then, oh, you would divide the family. And so sometimes that divide and those fears are the things that gets in the way of the community when it comes to the Black community. And then just also thinking about where we are now and how sometimes the Black community don't really trust the police. There's this divide of like, okay, well, they're not going to believe me. Well, I had this situation happen and I really didn't feel like the police understood me then. And so the things that come into the perspective is the not reporting is just not being believed. And again, this is across the board with any survivor, with any victim. Yet again, you will hear a lot of Black women at the top of the list saying, hey, I'm not going to tell them my business. They didn't help me, or this happened in my family and they weren't there. So why do I have to report that? And then the other piece is, you know, not knowing that there's resources out there for women of color. And so the socioeconomic barriers do play a part, and just knowing how to just get on with life, covering things up. And I speak to a perspective of things that that are covered up don't heal well. And so I sit with individuals, men and women, where, yeah, they first come in and are saying, I'm depressed, I have high anxiety, I don't know. And then, you know, and trying to dig those things. And then, yes, as we begin to peel back the onion layers and uncover the thing, I'm always trying to get to the root of the thing. And I'll sit in this seat and say, we got to get to the root. It's something more there. Like in people, we like the iceberg. We see the thing at the tip, but what's underneath all of that? And whatever we discover underneath there, then what caused it? And 9 times out of 10 it's sexual assault, it's rape, it's some form of abuse that was done. And I must say that there's a lot of men that are coming today and are talking about things that were done to them within their family dynamics, and really just seeing the resilience in our men, young and old, that can really sit and talk about it. And then, yeah, like, okay, I didn't said it. Okay, let's move on. And so I always try to get into doing the trauma narrative and having individuals create their story in that way. So, you know, I think going back to that piece is that when it comes to Black survivors, they just choose not to report, and they find other means to cope until they realize and they break, where they say, I need help, I need more to do. And I'm sorry, I don't know why my computer continues to go on and off. I'm gonna have to figure this out, but yeah, it keeps going on and off.
That's okay.
So yeah.
Well, thank you for that added information, because there's just so much I'm thinking about right now. Like I feel like we could talk this topic for hours. You know, one of the things that struck me about what you were talking about, Keziah, is that this idea of how families will respond. And I had an uncle who was abusive. He abused his own children. And my mom, when that all happened, I mean, he got sent to prison and everything. That's how hellish it was. My mom never came to us and asked us if anything had happened. Now, keep in mind, this is late 70s, early 80s. These conversations did not happen in families. They didn't happen in schools. So the prevention work that you're doing in schools, McKenzie, is invaluable. And so I was mad at her for a long, long time and really did not realize how that affected my relationship with her until I became a mom. And boy, I'm ultra protective of my children. Like that is, in my opinion, as a parent, the number one thing we need to protect them against. And then, ended up doing some of my own therapy, and my therapist was like, Maria, you're not being fair. You know all of these things in modern day. Your mom didn't know that stuff back then. And then, hey, remember that abusers are good at grooming. That's one of the things they do. So that means fooling everybody around them, and so, what I take away from all of that is, as parents, whatever we can do to step into the space of this uncomfortable conversation is invaluable, because let's hope we're the first people our kids tell if that happens to them. And if we're not, they will go into adulthood and it'll show up in other ways. And, you've seen that happen. So I think that's critical to understand. I also think that, seeking different ways of counseling is important. Not everybody's the same. Whether it's going to be EMDR or talk therapy or writing your trauma narratives, that's all important, really good stuff, and different people respond differently. So let's talk a little bit about that, each of you. So I'll start with Anna. Tell us a little bit about what you've experienced, what tools you use and you think have been some of the most effective with some of the clients that you've seen at ASTOP.
Yeah, I definitely think I was sitting and thinking about this question a lot while preparing for this interview. And I think it always comes back to support. And it seems so basic, but it's the most important thing in supporting an individual who's going through and recovering from sexual abuse or sexual assault is just being that person who doesn't judge them, who listens to them, who gives them the space to be vulnerable, to be upset, to be angry, to let them experience that wide range of emotions that come from healing from sexual abuse or sexual assault. So support was really the first thing that kind of came to my mind. And I think at ASTOP, it's really important to us that we empower our clients to be able to make the choices that are best for them. We recognize that every single client that we come in contact with, there's no one size fits all approach. Every person needs a different approach, and we want to give them that choice, because when you think about sexual assault and sexual abuse, a lot of times, even family members, friends, you have to do this. You have to report to the police. You have to get a SANE exam. You have to get services somewhere. And so a lot of times, I think when they disclose to loved ones in their life, there's maybe this choice taken away from them of how they want to proceed and move forward. And I think that that's something that you think about the crime in itself, right, is that it's overpowering someone. It's exerting that power, that control over another individual. And so we really want to empower our clients that they know what is best for them, and for them to be able to identify what their healing journey looks like. And that can look different with children, because there's, that aspect of kids involved in there. But it's really important to us, even with the children, that we're empowering them, that we're giving them opportunities to bring back their own power within themselves. themselves. And I really do think counseling and just even in general, our advocacy support is really helpful with our clients who come through the door. Like I said, it's an additional person that they can talk to, and it's someone where they can call with, there's no judgment at all. We're just there to listen to them. And help guide them to what is best for them. And then with our EMDR therapy, we find it is incredibly effective with any of our victims or survivors who are experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. And I can kind of let Kaitlyn be able to elaborate a little bit more on what EMDR is specifically, but we do find that it is incredibly helpful with our clients who come through our door who have those PTSD symptoms presenting. And I think even just about continued support through our crisis line, even if someone, stops getting our advocacy services and our counseling services, if they're faced with a trigger or something that just comes up and makes them think about what happened, that our crisis line is really there just for anyone to be able to give us a call and get that support. And especially our clients who maybe feel like they've done the counseling, they've done the advocacy, but like I said, triggers pop up, throughout their life. And we're really just there to be able to help them process those triggers or give them that needed support in the moment. So I think those are really the biggest things on that healing journey. And I think for any community member out there who has a loved one who's experienced this, I really think it is just giving that unconditional support and offering that support in a non-judgmental way of, I would have done this, you should have done that. It's best if you get that counseling, being able to let them make the choices that are best for them is incredibly important.
Keziah, same question for you. What have you found effective in your practice?
Definitely the EMDR. I am not certified yet, but we are the next wave that have come in that yes, Kaitlyn, they're getting ready to prepare us for that.
It's seriously, I'm so glad they're doing. So SSM got me trained too. So listen, they're for it, and to me that just speaks volumes. And what I'm going to tell, it just adds an extra layer to your practice. And I'm so excited to hear what your experience with it. So that's really good. All right, I'll stop.
No, Kaitlyn, I know I feel you because as an intern here, I got to see it up close. You hear it so much just about what it do and the success rate. A lot of therapists have successful discharges because of EMDR. Yep. I've seen it.
And you'll have to do it. Yeah. When you get trained, you have to do it yourself. And so after I was like, what? Because I didn't go with a big trauma the first time. I was like, I don't know this person. They haven't earned my story yet. So I went with like a medium-sized trauma, is like I would like to say. But then my experience was so good. I was like, oh my gosh. And truthfully, it's never been like so it's going to be awesome.
Wow, this is going to be awesome. And I love it. And I can't wait to hear you speak to that, Kaitlyn, because I know what wonders it does. And I've actually have clients right now that I can refer to, but yet they're here and they want to start here. They might have had a relapse and things or something else happen, but I actually have clients that I sit with that talk about just the beauty of EMDR and just what it has done for them. I think for me, on another note, what I do is I love art therapy as well, and just allowing my victims or survivors. And remember that too, it's always important that we ask the client what they identify as. It could have been 20 years, but they still want to identify as a victim. It doesn't mean that they've arrived or still dealing with it, but they still want to identify as a victim. And some individuals, once they overcome, they say, no, I want to be called a survivor. And just also knowing that respect of her level. So that's why you will hear me saying victim or survivor, because most individuals that have experienced sexual assault, sexual abuse, rape, all those forms of abuse, they have a right to label themselves as whatever they want. So I've learned that in just my therapy approach. And then just thinking of the trauma-focused CBT, so the psychoeducation around it, the cognitive practicing skills, understanding their story, getting them more comfortable with being able to talk about things that have happened to them, teaching the relaxation skills as well around the trauma-informed, allows them to be open a lot more, and just the effective skills behind it, addressing the emotional dysregulation part of it. So trauma-focused is another one that I love. And then also introducing them to the consequence wheel of sexual assault. I love going over that as well, and them being able to say, oh my God, I'm dealing with low self-esteem. I have no confidence. Oh my God, I realize that I'm guarded in certain ways and I don't allow people in. And them being able to talk about those things where they'll be able to see and connect that with whatever abuse happened to them. So the consequence to sexual abuse wheel is another lifesaver, and it holds a lot of weight as a therapist that I use with my clients.
Awesome. Thanks, Keziah. All right, Kaitlyn, it's time to hear all about EMDR and whatever else you've got in your toolbox over there. Give us a quick rundown here.
Okay, quick rundown. So what I say with EMDR, one, we are not hypnotizing you. If I was able to do that, I would just say I'm hypnotizing you. You're completely awake. You're completely in control. We're activating the limbic part of your brain, which typically only gets activated during REM sleep. So if you ever watch somebody sleep and their eyes are moving, right? So it's the bilateral movement. Whether you use the light bar, whether you do tapping, whether you're holding the tappers in your hands. I use the light bar. I kind of like it. So you have to do a whole protocol, right? And that's the evidence-based research. That's why we do that. So you go through the protocol, you pick a target memory, and then you kind of get into processing. And so what I tell people is, let's think of this as a memory, okay? So this is the memory, let's say we picked this, and every memory has roots, right? And so EMDR doesn't take away the memory, but it can help take away the sting of the roots, which could be symptoms, right? Or the responses that you've had, and it helps eliminate some of that sting, and it makes the memory more tolerable or livable. Hopefully that's a word. So again, we don't hypnotize you. We don't do anything like that. But after you've gone through the protocol, you come in and you process in this way. Your brain does the work. Some people are a little bit more sensory. I was. So like my nose got warm and then my ears felt like they were on fire and then they got cold and my toes were cold. So I was very sensory and then processed through that way. Other people are kind of more movie scenes. So they'll walk through the scenes. Some people are a little bit of both or a combination, and you work through that memory in just a different way, just activating a different part. And so that's what I meant, as someone can come in with very high symptoms, right? And due to the memory, and we're able to kind of help take away some of that sting. That's the best way I can kind of describe it. When we get, is that
That's
sort of
beautiful. I love that, Kaitlyn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Can you
just
just
makes
teach
it more
me?
livable. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a beautiful modality. And then brain spotting has also stemmed out of EMDR. And I hope to get trained in that. It's just another way, and you process differently through eye movements too. So there are different modalities that are out there. We are living in a community, and SSM, is a big proponent of training people in that and doing that. So it's an awesome opportunity. So that's a little bit about EMDR. But what I would want to say back to different modalities, or kind of to bring this whole thing full circle, a lot of times what people tell me and what I'm working through is not only the secret, but it is the response. So a lot of them taking on that shame and that guilt of what happened and how they thought they would react different. You know what I mean? So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So that's where that trauma work really comes in, and helping people work through that. And we don't know how we're going to react to a traumatic situation. And so really giving them that psychoeducation on what trauma is, what trauma responses are, and then working through those different emotions of, okay, we didn't know that a trauma was going to happen, right? I talk about this in my book that's coming out, how I thought my trauma response to that situation was going to be different, and it wasn't, and a lot of clients are kind of telling me that same thing. And so we just kind of work through those different things. And I just think that that's important because however you identify, oftentimes the person who's been perpetrated takes it all on, like, well, I should have protected myself. Why didn't I know better, right? What was I doing? Why didn't I fight back, right? Because we all want to think we're going to be a fighter, right? But when we can fully understand trauma and that work and our responses, it kind of helps them understand act in a traumatic situation. It can kind of help them recognize and look at it from a different angle. But everything that you ladies said is stuff that I do as well, and just try to customize their treatment. And I try to get people to understand, own your story, and whatever that looks like, I'm okay with it. And let's walk. I'm just going to walk with you. I can be behind you. I can be in front of you. I can be the side of you, whatever you kind of need. And then we figure it out along the way. So that's kind of how I would close on what I do.
Awesome. Thank you all for walking us through some of those various tools. It's interesting to me how much enthusiasm there is around EMDR, because not that long ago, that was not considered a viable tool within psychotherapy, which, to me, it just reminds me that psychotherapy is a relatively new science, right? I mean, like, people think about, some of the founders or the pioneers of psychotherapy, Freud and Jung, and that's not that long ago that they were around,
I like to say that those are the fathers of psychology and we're just the ladies, or however you want to think of it. The new one, like, positive psychology is a thing now, and trying different things like that.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely evolving. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think, anytime something new is brought to the forefront of this, there's going to be that initial pushback and questioning as to the efficacy of it. And I know that happened with EMDR. And then it's cool to see now that that's turning. The longer it's in practice, the more positives that come of it, the better it is. So McKenzie, let's shift gears a little bit here. So ASTOP always does lots and lots in the month of April to inform the community about Sexual Awareness Month. So I know you're the brand new prevention educator there, so we're happy to have you here and being able to introduce you to the community. Can you give us an overview of what is going to be happening in Fond du Lac County?
Yeah, thank you, Maria. So we are going to do our annual t-shirts for Denim Day. That link should be up on our Facebook page by the end of the week. Also, flyers will be around town with QR codes for the community to order t-shirts. With that being said, there will also be Denim Day displays plastered around the community to show that front for our victims and our survivors, and let them know that area businesses are there to support them and give them the resources that they may need to deal with their traumas. We will also be the charity of the month at Blue Door Coffee in Campbellsport. So head on out to Blue Door to help support ASTOP and help keep our resources free for our victims and clients. Also, the Day of Teal is April 5th, where Teal in the community to support victims of sexual assault. Denim Day this year is Wednesday, April 27th. So if you order a shirt, rock that shirt on Denim Day with your jeans to help support, give that victim blaming, help those victims with the victim blaming that is happening in our everyday life. don't hesitate to watch our Facebook page for more information, because like Maria said, I am new to the position. So kind of just jumping in full force to get Sexual Assault Awareness Month going ahead.
Awesome. Well, Denim Day falls on the same day as Power of the Purse. So if folks want to get a little bit less fancy for our Power of the Purse and wear their denim and t-shirts, I am definitely behind that this year. So awesome. Thank you for making us aware of all that's going on here in the community. And, you know, it's not just about raising awareness, it's about raising funding, because you know, as a nonprofit agency, you can't do this work without being able to pay the people to be there and do the work, right? And so I encourage anyone that's listening to support ASTOP and or your local sexual abuse center during the month of April, either financially or with your time or in some other way. So thank you both for coming and letting us in on what is going on. Keziah and Kaitlyn, thank you again for your perspectives as therapists working. And, you know, to all of you, this is not you couldn't pay me enough to do your jobs, especially when it comes to helping people heal from, you know, the emotional trauma of sexual abuse. So thank you for that. Yeah. With that, this ends another conversation of Project Table Talk. We will look forward to seeing you all again, our listeners, at 1 o'clock on Thursday, April 7th. Which is 1 week earlier than usual. Normally we're second and fourth week. We're going first and third week in April so that we can fit in one more of these mental health activities before our Power of the Purse event on the 27th, which is Denim Day. And the topic on the 7th will tie into April as Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. April's a big month. It's, you know, sexual assault awareness, child abuse awareness, my birthday, all of those great things going on in April. So let's get the word out on that. We're going to be meeting with some pediatricians here in town and talking about how child abuse affects the development of children, not just from a psychological standpoint, but also physical, even if physical abuse hasn't occurred. What types of things show up in children and later as adults if they've experienced abuse. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. And I thank all of you again for coming today and listening with us as we at the Women's Fund continue to do our part with the Fond du Lac Says No More initiative, supporting our mission of facilitating bold change for women and girls in Fond du Lac County. Thank you.